The targets were established to provide guidance. They are not written in stone as even maximum.
I would say in your responses to the parents, you have not said that space is a concern, budget is a concern, teacher staff is a concern. You've only said it's about coming in under this number. So if those are not concerns and you agree smaller is better and we have the staff and money for it, why then wouldn't you split it up and keep it as the 4 sections like it is right now?
Because there's been a standard that has been established that takes into account when a class collapses, meaning reduced, as is the case if a class is under enrolled then and numbers lower than anticipated, or when a class is expanding. Space is an issue because you can't put more classrooms in a building than there is space to accommodate.
So are you saying there is no space?
No, I didn't say that. I can tell you that there are 2 classrooms at Greenville that can be used, not ideally, because that would mean if we went and utilized the current available classrooms, some of the services that are currently provided, where art teachers, for example, have a classroom, would go back to on the cart. It can happen. It's not impossible. Space that may be used for teacher development would no longer be available. But if we have to use that for student space, we can.
So why would you look at past precedent when essentially the ground is changing under us within the year, when you have clearly a community demand and it will be better for the children, as we all agree, to have a smaller class size?
Well, community demand does not always dictate. I'm sure the board would not want to be in a position, and administration would not be in a position that community demand forced policy changes and has other implications that can't be decided in isolation. The standard that was used to establish the additional spaces that have already, the additional teachers that have already been established at Greenville, is the same standard that'll be used to decide whether or not we expand 3rd grade. And that is when those numbers reached a point that exceeded those numbers, same thing at Sealy Place, that would be the standard. And until we established a new protocol, consistency and past practice would suggest that we should use a practice that has been in place that has worked up until now. Again, I was a classroom teacher. It would absolutely make more sense if I was a classroom teacher, I would certainly want less than 24 students in my classroom. But there is a standard that's in place and we should be consistent in how we apply that standard.
I don't know, there are a lot more students in some other grade, you need classrooms for that, and I would understand, but I just don't understand why the change if cost is not a factor.
There is no change. Parameters for how class sizes are established is not a change. The issue is the parameters change from 2nd grade to 3rd grade. There's a shift. It goes from a recommended target of a maximum of 22 from 2nd to 3rd, from K to 3 to 2, and 3 through 6, the suggested max is 24. So that's not a change. That has been the standards.
We get the basic math, 18 times 4 is 72, 24 times 3 is 72. There are 72 kids, you can have either 3 classes of 24 or 4 of 18. We have had 4 of 18 thus far, approximately. We will now have 3 of 24. So we're changing something. Meets expectations versus exceeds expectations is what we're talking about. Most people did not choose Edgemont for schools that meet expectations, but rather than exceed expectations.
That's why this number is a constantly evolving scenario. Students move in and at some point, we'll just have to make a decision that will either consolidate classrooms, or collapse classrooms, or expand them. And we'll have to live whatever that decision is. And if it means that we add another teacher and those numbers are lower, we'll have to eat that cost and all the implications that go along with that in terms of utilizing classrooms that would not otherwise be available. And we'll have to live with that. But at some point, we just will have to make a decision for sure. But that number is constantly changing, and more so than it has. And since I've been here anyway, it has not been this fluid in the time that I've been in the district.
We all moved here because we wanted, honestly, private school education in a public school setting. That's what we thought we were getting. And so when you're hitting 24 in a 3rd grade class, that doesn't quite feel right.
if enrollment got to a point where you had to utilize space that's not ideal, that's what you do as a building principal. It means you have a classroom on the stage in the cafeteria or the auditorium. That's what your numbers say. That's what you ultimately have to do. Doesn't mean it's ideal, but that's what you have to do. Greenville has 2 classrooms that are currently configured as classrooms that could be utilized for instructional space for a typical K through 6 classroom. Right now, those rooms are used for music, actually for music and pull-out art. Ideally, teachers would like their own space to provide that instruction. Sometimes that's not realistic, and you can't do it because your enrollment requires that you utilize all available space. So they would have to take their art instruction and their music instruction on what's called on a cart, which means you go from classroom to classroom instead of having students come to a designated room for art or music. So yes, those classrooms are there. They're not ideal spaces based on the way they are currently being utilized, but could certainly be prioritized for that space if it needed to be. So that's what I meant when I said there is space, and it's not ideal space because those teachers would not have a designated room.